Hello, everyone. Happy Wednesday. Happy hump day. Welcome to the conversation. I am your host, Yolanda Trotman, and thank you for joining us on this very dreary, very cold, unusually cold Wednesday in May. But hopefully, the guests that you will be able to meet and interact with tonight will change all of that. Once again, want to thank all of you who answered the call a few weeks ago when I first asked for names of people and organizations who were doing wonderful things here in the Charlotte area, because you all came through in a major way. What we found was that there were so many people, so many organizations. What I thought was going to be a one-part show ended up becoming a four-part series for this segment, because we are absolutely going to end up doing another segment of Wonderful Wednesdays later in the summer. So if you missed our first episode featured Demi Knight, Clark of She Built This City, and Deborah Woolard of Project Love Charlotte, and their stories were completely inspiring. We are now in our second segment of Wonderful Wednesdays, and I am incredibly excited about both of our guests, because we're going to talk about a couple of different things, but they relate specifically to children, to education, to filling those gaps, and specifically for those parents that are tuning in now or tuning into the replay. We're going to talk a little bit about what is realistic in our expectations as we start thinking about the fall, as we start thinking about better preparedness as far as getting ready to deal with whether or not schools are even going to be back in session, and all of those things are associated with that. So our conversation tonight features two powerhouses. One is an attorney, an assistant district attorney here in Charlotte. The other is an educator. So sit back and relax. Of course, as always, if you have questions, make sure that you drop your questions in the comments. I can see them as they pop up, and I can obviously relay those to our guests. And of course, if you have not already done so, make sure that you like, follow, and subscribe at all things social media at the Convo Pod Show. So tonight's Wonderful Wednesdays features Dionne Kelly and Kyle King, and we are going to first start with ladies first. And our first guest, which is Dionne Kelly, has a very interesting story. I'm not going to go into too much detail because this is a mini conversation. When we have our full produced show, we'll be able to go into a little bit, or actually much more depth in terms of her story, and we'll be able to focus on a couple of major issues that we'll be talking about specifically, separate and apart from the work that she's doing here in Charlotte. But she is from New York. We forgive her for that because we love her anyway. And she's an assistant district attorney here in Charlotte. Has almost a 10-year career, but I'm going to let her tell her story, because no one can tell her story better than she can. So welcome everyone, Miss Dionne Kelly, to the show. Hey girl, hey.
Hey, I am so happy to be here. Thank you for having me tonight. I really appreciate it.
Well, it is my pleasure, Miss Lady. Now, listen, like I said, when I put out the call, I had heard of some of the work that you were doing, but your name
hmm
kept coming up repeatedly as someone who really just jumped right in almost immediately when COVID really started to hit, and we could tell what was really going to happen and some of the needs that would need to be filled. And you stepped right
hmm
in. So, but let's get to the good stuff first. So, how did you end
Okay.
up in Charlotte? What brought you here?
So, as you mentioned, I'm originally from New York. I moved to North Carolina in 2012, shortly after getting married. I originally lived in Greenville, North Carolina, where
Okay.
East Carolina University is. And I transitioned to Charlotte in 2017. Just because I was from a big city, the Greenville area just didn't really work for me. So Charlotte was the perfect
Mm-hmm.
balance.
Mm-hmm. Makes sense. Now, as far as what year did you actually end up here in Charlotte for the first time?
2017.
Okay. And so when you got here, what was your first impression?
I really liked the city. For me, Charlotte was like the perfect mix of having somewhat of a big city, but you still had the suburban life where you can go away and be tucked away. And so I think I like the fact that it had the best of both worlds.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, when you're talking about cities, very few cities are going to match up to New York, just as far as size and things going on. But I felt like Charlotte struck a good balance for me.
Okay. And did you come here? Were you already a licensed attorney at that point?
Yes, I graduated from law school in 2010, and
Okay.
I took my first two bars, New York and New Jersey, in 2010, and
Hmm.
was sworn in 2011. And I took the North Carolina bar in 2013.
Oh, you just fancy. You just fancy. Now, are you done with bars? Have you had enough?
Listen, there is nothing on this earth that can get me to sit for another bar exam, so I am done.
Yeah, same here. One and done. Yeah, I don't think I could go through that again. Okay, so you end up down here in
Yes.
Charlotte. Um, Now, when you started off, now did you start off at the DA's office where you are currently? Did you start off practicing somewhere else?
I was actually at the public defender's office.
Mm-hmm.
I was a public defender for a total of 5 years,
Mm-hmm.
about 2 years here in Charlotte, and about 2.5 years in Greenville, where I came from. And so I have been with the DA's office now for approximately 1 year.
So I have to ask because usually when you see
Hmm.
people leave the DA's office, it's the reverse. Usually people will come from the DA's office to the public defender's office and not the
Hmm.
reverse. So what
Hmm.
was it that made you decide that you wanted to make the move to become a prosecutor?
I think ultimately, in the grand scheme of things, you have the most power and influence to do the right thing as a prosecutor, where you actually have discretion and you have a say so in how cases are moved. I loved being a public defender, but as a public defender, you're more reactive, where as a prosecutor, I can be proactive.
Mm-hmm.
And so some of the cases that I would usually have to defend now, if there's no legal basis, I have the power to get rid of them. And
Okay.
so I feel like you can holistically do greater good and real justice from the prosecutor's side.
Okay. And what do you think one
Mhm.
of the biggest challenges that you face as a prosecutor?
I guess I don't know if I face anything with respect to my work. I think I faced more issues, or not necessarily issues, but a lot of opinions when I made the transition.
Mm.
Because when you're a defense attorney, it's like, we're a crew, we're a community, and they're like, how could you? So so I think initially I was more so dealing with that from colleagues when I made the transition.
Hmm.
So
And so, which team are you working with currently?
I'm currently on the habitual felon team. I
Okay.
started out on the juvenile team for about 6 months, and I made the transition to the habitual felon team.
Okay. So, once you made that transition to becoming a prosecutor,
Mhm.
obviously, as an attorney, as a defense attorney, you've got to have some work-life balance. So, how were you able to, or what do you do in terms of maintaining a work-life balance? Not now in the era of COVID,
Mhm.
but how were you maintaining your work-life balance pre-pandemic, if you will?
I think work-life balance is very important to me just because I'm involved in a lot of things outside of work. And so I work hard during the hours of 8 to 5. I'm at work, I'm grinding just to make sure that I can come out. I would say that the work-life balance between prosecutors and public defenders are pretty much the same. You will have your weeks, like when I'm preparing for trials, the week before that is usually pretty intense.
Hmm.
But that's pretty standard if you're on any trial team. I feel on either side of the coin. But I think in both arenas, you have a pretty good work life balance. I haven't had any issues with it. I can tell you the amount of days that I worked late in the office
Hmm.
after being there for about a year.
Okay. And what's your favorite thing
Mhm.
about the work that you do now?
My favorite thing is probably being in court. The habitual felon team is a trial team. And
Hmm.
so we are always in court, whether it's through administrative week, whether it's prepping for trials, things of that nature. I think being a courtroom trial attorney is the most appealing thing to me.
Hmm. All right. And so somehow COVID-19 hits
Yes.
and you find yourself in a situation where, well, we all do, those of us in the legal community, we're shocked, like, what do you mean court's going to be closed for a month? Like, what's
Right.
going on? We don't get it. What's happening? And then you decided that you were going to make a bold move in terms of helping a lot of people in the community.
Hmm.
First question, it's a two-part question. First,
Okay.
where did the idea come from? And what was the first thing that you felt like you absolutely had to do in order to give back?
I think the idea came from, I remember the Thursday, I believe it was March 12th, where we started hearing grumblings around the courthouse that courts may be closed. We're waiting for word from the Chief Justice. And I was actually grocery shopping, trying to get my house in order, making sure that I have food, making sure that I'm good.
Mhm.
And it really hit me that there's a segment of the population who, unlike me, where I can go to the supermarket and get whatever I need to make sure I'm comfortable, there's a segment that don't have the ability to prepare in that manner. And I think it stemmed really from my work as a public defender. I was really exposed to a lot of individuals that were poverty stricken, that came from very unfortunate circumstances. And so I was very fully aware of people with children who relied on school breakfast and lunch to sustain themselves. And so knowing that in the back of my mind and getting out of my personal selfish moment, I felt it was my obligation to do.
And so what happens next?
The next thing I did, once I decided I wanted to do this, I put up a Facebook post. I feel like everything happens on Facebook. So I put up a Facebook post sharing my intention. And honestly, I was going to go at this alone. I had a personal goal of at least reaching 50 families during
Mhm.
this pandemic. And so I put out a post, I let people know my intentions, and I actually asked people to refer individuals to me that may benefit.
Mhm.
And what it ultimately turned into was something much greater, a lot of community support.
And so what did you do when you first set out and made the post? You said it was only 50 people. Did you have a goal of what that looked like? What were you going to provide? Were you talking about multiple meals? Did you have a budget? What was the logistical part that you went through as far as what those 50 families would benefit from?
Absolutely. And so I knew I wanted to provide bags with non-perishable, not, I apologize, non-perishable items,
Mhm.
items that could be cooked. And I filled up, I wanted to do pasta, I wanted to do oatmeal, I wanted to do snacks for the kids, juice, chips, the soups. I mean, vegetables. I want it to be a substantial bag of food that can actually sustain a family for at least a week. I recognize at the time I did not know how long we would be on lockdown. It now turned out to be a little over 2 months, but I wanted to provide something substantial for at least a week
Mhm.
for each family. As far as a budget, I did not have a budget. I was going to go at it until I just couldn't anymore
Okay.
financially.
So
Hmm.
so when you got the response that you did, how did
Hmm.
you then decide to organize? Like, how do you get to the people? How do you, how do you do the deliveries? All of
Hmm.
that. So, did you start the next day, that Friday, or was it over the weekend?
I started the next day. Actually, one of my really good friends, Shamira Parker, shout out
Hey,
Shamira.
Shamira. Hey, girl.
She actually got on the phone with me first. So once I put it out there, she was like, let's talk about this and let's see how we can actually implement it. And so I'm relatively new to Charlotte. And so my connections, I should say, weren't really up to par, if I'm honest with myself.
Hmm.
And so she actually knew people in the community. People started donating, people I went to law school with, friends. co-workers, people were just like, this is a worthy cause. We would like to donate to it. And what Shamira did was she was able to set up a space where we can actually collect food, buy food, sort food, and actually have a pickup center for families to actually come and get the food. And so what we did was we put out flyers with all that information. We told people what they can donate, whether it was money, whether it was canned goods, the address to where we would be sorting the food, and the address for where people can come and pick it up.
Hmm.
So our first week, that is what we were doing as far as pickups
Did you
in
have
general.
an idea of a name, or was it just, hey, listen, if you need, this is what we have and we can help you?
Pretty much the latter.
Okay. And so
Mhm.
this is weekend one, right?
Correct.
Now, things have started to shift. We still don't exactly know how long we're going to be in this situation. When did it
Mhm.
become a situation where you knew this was going to be an ongoing thing, and when it got so much bigger than just the 50 families, which was your initial target?
I knew that within the first week. So the first week, based on all of the donations and the contributions, we were able to feed 243 families. I
Wow.
think by the middle of the week, I realized like, whoa, okay, this is like a big operation that people are relying on. And so I think at that time was when I recognized, okay, this is going to be something continuous. And I'm a woman of faith. And I told God, as long as you want me to do this, just allow me the opportunity, the provision, the resources to allow me to continue on this journey.
Hmm.
And so here we are about 2 months later, and I'm still going strong. I've been able to feed 540 families so far, and I have a goal where I'm trying to hit at least 600 families by the end of May. And
Hmm.
so it's still going pretty strong. As far as the implementation of it, I am in contact with some social workers from CMS schools that can identify families who are in need of these services. And so that has been extremely helpful. I've been able to work with schools, be able to drop bags off, make sure that students and their families are receiving it.
And so it became ultimately known as Feed Charlotte Babies, right?
Yes.
How did you come up
Mhm.
with the name?
Honestly, a lot of people, I guess when I first started, they were like, um, you're feeding people, right? You're feeding people. I'm like, yeah, but in particular, I'm feeding students out of school as well as their families. And I was like, you know what? These are our babies. Like when you really analyze it, these are these people, individuals, these students are the future of our community. So I was like, I'm just gonna call it Feed Charlotte Babies.
Mhm. And
Yeah.
so, for those of you who are just tuning in or that are just joining us, here at Wonderful Wednesdays, talking to Dionne Kelly. She's an assistant district attorney here in Charlotte, and we are talking about some of the wonderful work that she's doing in the community. Make sure that you drop a comment so that she can see, so that we can see it. Keisha says, "You got such a big heart. Keep it up."
I
James Whitmore,
appreciate
you know,
that.
Whit says, talks about your dedication. So, um, but what happens when courts reopen? What do you have in place in terms of being able to continue, and what type of help do
Mhm.
you need in order to be able to continue the mission?
Honestly, when courts open up, I would still like to continue the endeavor. I think the only thing that will change is the logistics of it. Because I'm working from home, I'm able to have contact, and social workers are able to come to me to pick up the bags and take them to the schools. I think the only difference would be the timing and how they will be distributed when I start back working. But I will say that even though courts are opening up June 1st, that I am still taking donations, whether that's food items, whether it's monetary funds. I am still going to go strong and hard in this endeavor until I just physically and financially can't go anymore. So if people would like to donate or contribute, they can absolutely do so.
And how can they donate?
I have Cash App for those who use Cash App. I also have Venmo.
Okay. What's the
Um,
Cash App?
my Cash App handle is $ESQ times three. So that's ESQX3.
Mm-hmm.
And my Venmo handle is at Dionne ESQ. So that is at DIONNE ESQ.
Okay. And that's how now is it tax deductible at this point or not tax deductible?
It is not tax deductible only because I am not a nonprofit organization. I am doing this individually.
Okay.
Mhm.
And so if someone wants to donate, that's what I have up on the screen. So the Cash App is ESQX3 and Dion ESQ. Is that correct? I'll make sure I have it correct up there.
That is correct. And if people would like to contact me directly via email, if they know a family or if they are in need of this service, they can email me at dkfeedcharlottebabies@gmail.com. That is dkfeedcharlottebabies@gmail.com.
Now, when you say it's been over 500 or 540 families to date, now is this the same families or is this a one time for each family or is this ongoing per family?
This is ongoing per family. And so the reason why I love working with the social workers in schools is because they can keep track of what is dispersed and what families have received.
Hmm.
And so it allows me to reach a lot of families. So I'm not just giving bags to the same individuals, if that makes sense.
Gotcha. What's
Mhm.
been the most surprising thing that you have found in doing this type of work?
Honestly, the love from strangers. Now, it's one thing when your family and your friends and your classmates get involved, but I have been at the supermarket and they're like, wow, you have a lot of kids in the home because I'm buying cereal, I'm buying pasta. And I'm like,
Hmm.
actually, there are no kids in my home, but here is what I'm doing. And once I tell people about the project, I have gotten money from strangers. I have had strangers pay for half of my grocery bill just to contribute to the program. So I
Hmm.
think for me, coming from New York, I love my city,
Y'all not
but
doing that up top.
no, no, that is not happening in New York. So that has been very different for me.
Okay. And so when you started this as an idea, and I think we could probably both agree, God blesses you with grand visions that sometimes are much bigger than you could ever imagine.
Mhm.
Are there any concerns that you have that we as the community can help you with as far as the logistics to be able to keep this going?
The only concern that I have is getting to a point where I won't be able to do this anymore. And
Hmm.
so the biggest thing I need from my community is to continue to support this endeavor, donate in whatever way you can. If there are people that even are open to making deliveries, dropping off packages, that will be helpful as well, especially since I'll be going back to work full time pretty soon. But doing whatever donations I can receive just to make sure that I can sustain this and maintain this throughout. I'm not even sure when the kids are going back to school. So I want to do it as long as they're not
Okay.
in. Mhm.
So it's the goal to continue it through the summer, obviously.
Absolutely.
When are
Absolutely.
deliveries? Are deliveries daily or a certain time during the week?
No, lately the deliveries are done during the week, and how I have it now is that social workers actually coming to me to pick up the bags, and then they're dispersed either the next day or the following day after that in school when these families come to school. So the schools are notifying the families, and then they're coming to the school to pick it up. So lately, I've been doing that once a week where I would prepare anyway, but around 50 bags or so
Hmm.
and have them delivered to schools.
Okay. And so what else do you need? So are you looking to do a certain day of the week? I'm just thinking out loud for you. Do you
Hmm.
need truck? I know you say you need people to help with deliveries and things of that nature. And I understand, I know that they can reach out to you through email. Do you
Hmm.
have any other needs other than financial and just people power, because I think people would need to
Mhm.
know, like, how long does it take for you to buy and sort, and do you have people that are helping with just that just the buying and the sorting itself, and
I
if they want
understand.
to be able to assist in that, how can
Mhm.
they help in that regard?
Well, because of the lockdown, I have been sorting in my home, and so I
By
don't really have.
yourself?
Yeah, I
Sis, we
actually.
got to get you some. We need you. We okay. So all right. So for those of you who are watching, Dionne needs a place to sort. There are plenty of buildings that are available that she just needs open space where she can sort. A location where that is central. There are schools everywhere. Our next guest should be able to help and jump in that regard, because you need a central location and
Mhm,
people need to
correct.
be able to get to you. And we can't have people in your house like that. I mean, I'm
Right.
just sorry. We're just not going to do that. So we need to find a location for you first and foremost, that somebody
Mhm,
can donate space for you. And then from there, be able to give you the opportunity to be able to bring people in as they need to. Because I'm
correct.
sure there's a wealth of people who have no problem with coming down and helping you sort, because obviously, that will allow you to get more out there faster. So okay,
Correct.
no ma'am, no,
Okay.
as of the end of the week, we're gonna find you a spot. So whoever's watching, drop a comment or tag somebody who can help Dionne get her a space so that she can do this sorting, so she don't have bags all up in her house like she is in the picture.
Right.
In the
Yes.
promo, because that was taken in your house. It looked like, is that in your house?
That was in my house, and there is not a day where I don't have bags in my dining room. So yes,
What else you need? You need bags. You need, are you doing the
I need
reusable bags
bags.
or what?
Yes, I'm doing the reusable, like, grocery bags. You can get
Hmm.
that from any grocery store. If people are willing to go grocery shopping, that would be a huge help to me. Right now, I'm doing all of the shopping. So I
Oh,
make a
sis. Okay, I'm sorry.
yeah.
Keep going. Keep going. I'm making a list of stuff you need. People we getting ready to get you in contact with. Go, keep going.
Yes. So I'm usually going shopping about 2 to 3 times a week. So if someone can help with that, I would greatly appreciate that as well.
Okay. All right. And when you go shopping, is there a particular grocery store that you use, or do we need to try to connect you with some other stores as well, or in other
I have
areas?
been doing pretty much Walmart and Food Lion. I am not restricted. Wherever the groceries come from, I'll utilize them. But just as far as pricing, I think Walmart has been the most ideal.
And are they donating to you, or do we need to roll up on them?
Look, I actually tried to speak to Walmart about donating because I know they do donate to endeavors like this, but they said because I was an individual and not a nonprofit organization that they could not donate to the initiative.
But we can connect you with a nonprofit
Correct.
that has that status. Okay, okay, we're gonna work on that too. All right, sis. What
Okay.
else you need? What else you need?
That is pretty much it. I mean, those things would keep this a well-oiled machine.
Okay. So the Cash App is up again. I'll drop the Cash App in the comments again for those of you who are just tuning in our conversation with Dionne. Now let's step away from feeding the babies. Now you also have a
Mhm.
big, ginormous Great Dane that
Yeah,
you got. Is he around, or he's
he
asleep?
He is sleeping, which is pretty much he eats and he sleeps and then he puts his weight on me. But he is almost 2 years old. His birthday is in July. He weighs about 150 pounds.
Wait,
Um,
what?
yes. And when I stand him up on his legs, he is about my height. And I'm 5'9", just to give you guys a visual. So he's a big boy, but he's the sweetest dog ever.
And his name?
Goliath.
Okay. All right. So everybody watching, y'all send some puppy love out to Goliath so he doesn't eat her out of house and home either. God, I don't even want to know how much he eats in a day. Don't even
Oh,
tell us. We don't want to
mm,
know.
mhm.
We definitely
You guys
don't
don't wanna know.
want to know. All right. So are you in the process of creating a nonprofit for this?
I have been praying about it. A lot of people are like, just create the nonprofit, but I haven't looked into it, but it is something that I am considering. I may need to talk to you on the side
Oh, for sure.
about that.
For sure. The process is so much easier than you think. With our show with Churl Girl, we done messed around and claimed a whole nonprofit and named it and everything in the midst of the show.
Yes.
So, I'm pushy that way. We'll get it done. We'll
Okay.
definitely get it done. So, listen, I want to bring up our next guest, but can you stick around because I want to make sure that everybody once again knows how to get in touch with you.
Absolutely.
If you're tuning in, if you haven't seen the story that they did on you, I believe it was WSOC. I believe
Correct.
Kevin Campbell did the story, did a great
Mhm.
story, because that obviously helps get the word out. But we need to get this beyond just a news cycle here and there. So we need to make sure that people are consistently and continually aware of the work that you're doing and be able to step in. And we're going to have a space for you by the end of the week if we have to start making phone calls and get this
Thank
thing done
God.
because you
I
need a
love it.
space. We can't keep you. No, ma'am. We're not going to keep doing this in the crib. No, ma'am. No, ma'am. All right. So
I'm
those
with
of
you on
you,
it.
yes. So those of you who are watching, again, her Cash App is up. You can Cash App her at ESQX3. Her Venmo is Dionne ESQ. Not tax deductible at this point, but obviously anything that you can do to help. And of course, if you're interested or if you have contacts or connections that can help her in terms of finding space where she can do the sorting, of course, on a consistent basis, transportation, other logistics, helping to get food delivered. If you are an educator or a social worker, are you still identifying families at this point?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Great. So, if you have families, particularly if you are in the school system that she may be able to assist, then that's the email address, and I'll drop that in the comments as well. And to make sure that you can get out there because it takes a village, as we know, and it's
Absolutely.
so important that we wrap our arms around our babies
That's
because we
correct.
have no idea how much longer we're going to be in this position. But we're going to talk to Kyle about that next. So stay with us, and
Absolutely.
I'll bring
Will
you
do.
back in a little bit. Thanks so much,
Thank
sis.
you.
Our next guest is someone that, once again, you guys answered the call and I asked, give me names of people who are doing amazing things. And our next guest is an educator, the dean of students at one of Charlotte's premier charter schools. But he's also an entrepreneur and he has a very interesting way that he approaches education and how his institute specifically has reached tens of thousands already. But we're going to talk about obviously the work that he's doing within the community, but this is also a segment for parents because we all also have to be able to talk about how we're going to navigate this space realistically if schools don't open in a traditional way. Perhaps the traditional school as we know it has changed for much longer than we could have ever anticipated. And he's going to give us some insight into that and how we can prepare ourselves as parents to be able to navigate what that looks like in August, even if we end up with another partial school year where we're in the same or a similar situation that we're in now. So join me, ladies and gentlemen, as we welcome our guest, Mr. Kyle King, to
Hello,
the conversation. Hello, hello. How are you?
I'm very well.
Thank you so much for joining us. Like I said, when I asked for names, your name specifically came up, and obviously, I knew of you socially. I used to be a teacher, so when I saw what Queen City was doing, I said absolutely. And of course, you answered the call very quickly. So thank you for joining us tonight. I'm so excited to have you. How are you holding up in all of this?
It's been great, actually. I think I'm the only person out here that has really been enjoying this time. It's given me a lot of time to recalibrate, really reevaluate, and reflect on what matters. I'm
Hmm.
a father, so this has been able to give me the opportunity of spending that quality time, uninterrupted time. I'm homeschooling my 4-year-old, so it's been very interesting balancing work and then
Hmm.
also balancing his work as well because I didn't know that 4-year-olds needed Chromebooks and needed their work up in Zoom calls. So it's been a transition, but I'm glad I guess, getting my money's worth from sending him to school.
Mm, I
So it's
bet.
been great. It's been great being able to serve the community as well. It's been an awesome opportunity to. understand and see what matters.
Now you have been an educator for some time, but let's get back to some of the of who is Kyle King. So where are you from originally?
Originally from Atlanta, Georgia. So
Okay.
I moved here to Charlotte 3 years ago. My
Okay.
son was born at the time. Interesting story about me. So I came from the entrepreneurial space. I've never formally taught in a classroom.
Get
Um,
out of here.
so serious. So I've built an educational company that has expanded as far as the UK. We had an educational enrichment center. I've worked with schools around the country, and we've done a lot of different things within the field of education. But I saw that from a corporate standpoint and from an entrepreneurial standpoint, there was a gap between what schools were preparing students for in the classroom and what the industry needed. And I wanted to be able to fill that gap. And through filling that gap, I understood that there's a lot of other things in the school system that we needed to focus on in terms of culturally relevant pedagogy, being able to understand why teachers aren't being trained effectively or why they're not being given the resources to be truly successful within the classroom, all of the different things that students are truly facing, whether it be at home, from a mental health perspective, from an equity perspective. So we pretty much combined all of these different things, developed entrepreneurial resources, STEM resources, and then connected it within the current climate of what schools were doing. And then we've been really been able to be successful.
So when did you identify as the gap or one of the gaps in the educational system in general that prompted you to start this?
That's a great question. So 2 + 2, yes, is 4 anywhere. But if you can't apply that skill set and being able to understand what led to the depression in 20 and or the recession in '08, or you understand applied mathematics and can prepare for a test, but you can't understand what it takes to get approved for a home, or you can understand chemistry or physics, but you can't understand how to handle conflict effectively or how to have crucial conversations. So all of the different things, 21st century skills, collaboration, critical thinking, communication, all of these different things that the industry needs to be able to excel as a professional, as a parent, and all of these different areas are so important. And yes, content is very important, and instruction and high quality instruction is important. But if we're not creating an environment for our students to be successful outside of the classroom and complementing it with what they're being taught within the classroom, then what are we truly teaching our students?
And so when did you identify that as a gap? Like what year was that?
Interestingly, I was a sophomore in college. So I was a sophomore and I started to see that I came from Alabama A&M University, an
Okay.
HBCU. And one of the things when I was experiencing in college is that I could go to internships, but even with a dual degree in finance and international business, I didn't have the backing from a collegiate standpoint to be able to compete on a higher level. I believe coming from a two-parent home, it was different because I was already given that foundation, but I saw that a lot of my peers didn't have those resources, didn't have those, I guess, qualities or abilities that would advance them to gaining internships, understanding interviewing skills, understanding how to go search for opportunities, problem solving, all these different things. And even adults that I've done business with don't have these skill sets. So instead of focusing so much on the adult or the college student and developing them, where does it start? It starts as a child. So I wanted to be able to go back into school systems and invest in our school systems to prepare them so that we don't have the result of adults that are struggling right now.
So coming into this space, not having been an educator yourself, then how do you gain the respect of other educators when you haven't been in the trenches, if you will?
Results. I think at first it was a battle because I have
Mm-hmm.
all of these great ideas. I'm a visionary. I'm an innovator, and then educational space is a lot different because you have to have your tenure. You have to put your
Mm-hmm.
years in. It's kind of one of those things. Even as an administrator, how can you tell me how to work with my students if you've never formally been in class working with students? And being able to understand and be humble, but remain, I guess, in front of a lot of where our educators traditionally are taught. So being able to understand how to build relationships with our students outside of what the textbook is teaching, being able to understand we can't truly reach our students without being able to first relate to our students,
Right.
and then creating these innovative models using the research that we've actually done, and then being able to have a team of educators around me that can pretty much validate everything that I'm being able to say. So Results is definitely one. Just time, patience, and then being able to remain humble, but being able to trust your counsel as well, because I truly believe that great leaders have great counsel. So
Mm-hmm.
being able to reach out to principals, hey, what about this strategy, or what about this strategy? And that was one of the things that I was able to take advantage of before I came into my role as dean. I reached out to 100 other administrators around the country at the top schools and just said, hey, what are some of the strategies that you would use that are successful at your schools? And instead of me coming in full force with, hey, these are the strategies that we're going to roll out, hey, these are strategies that these other schools are using, I think these are some things that we should consider. But as a teacher, what do you guys think? What is working and what isn't working in your classroom? And serving as a resource, as a mentor, as a coach, as a guide, instead of just trying to be the dictator, like all of my ideas work.
Okay. So undergrad and Alabama,
Mhm.
dual degree. What about masters or anything beyond that?
Currently, so I'm finishing up my master's at UNCC right now, a master's
Okay.
in education with urban education.
Interesting. Now, how much time do you have left? Sound like you in jail. How much time you got?
Yeah. I finish up in the spring of next year.
Okay.
Interestingly, I was going to take a break over the summer because of a lot of the different things that we're going through currently. But I looked at my degree and it said 70% finished. So I was like, we're just going to rock this out and finish it out strong.
Okay, good. So what was your involvement with Queen City STEM before before you officially became the dean of students?
Interesting. So when I moved here officially, I volunteered at the school. So
Mm-hmm.
I didn't necessarily know how I wanted to be able to work within the educational system here in Charlotte when I moved here 3 years ago. So I was driving down Mallard Creek. I noticed a school that said Queen City STEM. I pulled in the parking lot and literally walked in because I understood that it was a STEM school and said, how can I serve? Or how can I work
Mm-hmm.
with your students? So through volunteering, working with the students from an entrepreneurial perspective, teaching in the class a few days out the week, at the end of that school year, I was directing marketing and being able to help them get their name out in the community. And then 2 years later, I'm one of the administrators at the school.
And so what's the age range of the students at the school? Because it's a charter school. Is
Yes,
that right? Okay.
we're a K-9 charter. I will be adding a grade level every year until we're K-12.
Okay. And so what's the difference then in terms of how Queen City approaches education in general versus what a child may see in a more traditional model?
That's a great question. So we bridge the gap between business and academia. And what that means is that a lot of real life applications, STEM focused curriculums, and hands-on learning. So project-based learning. So a lot of our courses, whether it's in a social studies class, a math class, or a ELA class, we're integrating STEM. We're integrating the problem solving, the communication. We're having different projects. We're integrating the community as well. So bringing businesses and organizations in. We're taking our students to Boeing and the Lockheed Martins, or bringing their professionals to our campus. There's been professionals that are from NASA, or even being able to have a virtual meeting where NASA engineers are on the screen, being able to work with our students in the classroom. Entrepreneurial symposiums. We're doing STEM fairs twice a year as well. Smaller class sizes. So traditionally at bigger public schools, you may see 25, 30 students in a classroom, whereas our school, there's not many times where it's over 16 to 18 in a classroom. And in the lower grade levels, it's a lot smaller as well. So we take pride in our educational structure and our overall curriculums. It's been a new administration, so there have been our challenges, but we really want to focus on developing the whole student and not just from a curriculum and a content perspective.
Excellent. So for those of you who are just joining us, Kyle King is with us from Queen City STEM School. He's the dean of students. And for those viewers who may not know what STEM stands for, most people do, but we can't make that assumption. So what's it stand for?
Science, technology, engineering, and mathematics.
So if I really am not interested in any of that as a kid, do I come to that school at a disadvantage?
So I'm going to challenge that perspective. So everything that we do is STEM. Everything.
Okay.
There's science in everything, even if you're, and this is the challenge. So we serve a specific demographic in the community that we serve. So I believe 80% of our student population is reduced in free lunch. So we serve a specific population, and students sometimes are interested in going STEM. But I asked the student, I see you have a new pair of Jordans on. What is the STEM in the Jordans? And if you can, tell me that STEM isn't related to your Jordans, then I won't say anything about STEM the rest of the year. So there's a science in how you create the Jordans. There's
Mm-hmm.
technology that pretty much designs and develops the actual Jordans that we wear. There's an
Mm-hmm.
engineering design process, and then there's also mathematics on how the performance of these shoes that you're wearing right
Mm-hmm.
there. So everything that we do is related to STEM in some type of way. So we're teaching the process, not necessarily the 4 words.
Interesting. Okay, so let's talk about what happened, and how you specifically jumped in once COVID first hit. So when I'm looking at your social media and all of that, you all were very intentional once we knew that schools were going to be out for a while in terms of making sure that the gap was filled, between your families, your students, and of course being able to continue to thrive during that time that schools were going to be out. So talk to us about what you felt like needed to be done first and how you took action to get it done.
Of course. So I think one of the biggest things that we were on calls about all of the time, principal calls, board of education calls, is instruction. How are we going to continue to teach our students? How are we going to get our students technology? How are we going to get our students Wi-Fi? And I'm sitting across a computer screen and I'm like, students come to school sometimes just to get away from their and challenges from home.
Mm-hmm.
Students come to school sometimes just to get their meal because they don't have anything at home. Students
Mm-hmm.
come to school for so much more than just education. And we as educators have sometimes forgotten that. So my focus was not on instruction. My focus was not on curriculum or when the schools were going to open back up. My focus is on being able to just first feed our students or be able to get them hygiene products or being able to just check on them from from a computer screen and just say, hey, how are you guys doing? And then I realized that now it's an equity issue because now our students don't have computers. Our
Mm-hmm.
students, even if they have technology, our students don't have internet capability within their area or within their households. And if you are a parent with 3-4 students or 3-4 children, and you only have one computer to share, how, as an educator, am I expecting you to turn your work in on time? So
Mm-hmm.
all of these different things we weren't seeing. So I wanted to more so back up from a lot of the different conversations that were convoluted and be able to see how can we actually serve our families and serve
Mm-hmm.
our students. So I reached out to a friend of mine, Lanier Malone, and she had already been cooking up something within the community. And she said, hey, I want to partner with a school and we want to feed 40 families or 50 families at the time. And I'll say, okay, cool, let's do it. Because I'm a person about execution. Let's just do it. Let's figure out the logistics later. So I brought it back to my school. It was something that we wanted to be able to facilitate because we recognized that we had 160 families that weren't going to be able to eat during this time.
Mm-hmm.
And we were not a part of the National School Lunch Program. So there's no funding or anything that we could have been able to provide for these families because we weren't a part of a specific program.
And that's very important. I want to stop you there because the assumption is, well, that doesn't matter. But when you're a charter school, you don't have access to a lot of that national funding, to be able to do those basic things. So when you saw that and you identified that need, was it difficult to meet it, or did you find that it was relatively easy or the community was able to step in to be able to help meet that need fairly easily?
I think one thing that Dionne said earlier was that the one thing that she noticed is that she received the love from strangers. And
Mm-hmm.
that's what we received as well. And I was so grateful and appreciative. And there was one time where I sat in my house and just cried because on one token, yes, it's a beautiful thing. We're getting all this love and support from strangers. But on the other token, why do we have to go through a pandemic for us to get
Mm-hmm.
love from strangers? So through to answer your question directly, yes, it was challenging because now you have to reach out, you have to kind of knock on people's doors. But it was refreshing that when you knocked on people's doors, they answered the call.
Mm-hmm.
So once we realized the plan, we began to just put together everything. We were shopping. I brought a videographer with me to pretty much in my 2-door at the time. We packed the whole car with $800 into almost $1,000 in groceries. And people
Mm-hmm.
similar to me when I was walking through the store, because I had my 4-year-old with me at the time. Is this going to be for all of you? And when we were talking to
I
different,
know they were like, I know he is not buying up all the food with his greedy behind and that one kid.
we were communicating with people, they're giving business cards. Hey, let me know how I can help. Let me know how I can help. And I believe as an entrepreneur, the power of follow-up has really been able to help us feed over 200 families through this time, and being able, all of the families at our school have been taken care of. And because we have a school, we've been able to set up shop at our school, do the breakdown, sorting, bagging, and everything. Our teachers came together so great through this time. They came to the school, helped us bag. We even had a drive-through line in the front of the school where we would wear masks and gloves and then just pass the bags to our families. And then even we dropped off bags at Fusion Force with Dionne as well. So we wanted to not only serve Queen City STEM families, also families within the community. And throughout that time, then CMS rolled out their food give back program as well.
Okay, so it sounds like you have a spot to help Dionne to be able to do her sorting then.
Here, definitely.
Problem solved. See, won't he do it? Won't he do it? Anyway, we'll talk about that when we get to the end. So, all right, so your families now are okay,
Yes.
relatively speaking. Were you able to fill in the technology gap and the access to internet that so a lot of people are even still dealing with now?
Yes. And I was so grateful for that as well. So we weren't a one-to-one school, but it was one of our goals for the end of the year. One-to-one means every student has technology within their hand. So moving forward, we worked with our central office and our board of directors, and they made it happen. So we were able to order technology and ensure that every single student at our school has technology during this time. So all of our students have technology. Now the Wi-Fi, that was a little bit out of our hands, but then Spectrum, they answered the call, and they're now providing free Wi-Fi for all of the families during this time as well. So it's been an amazing time where all of the students are taken care of from a technology standpoint. We've been able to work with our students from a food standpoint, and then hygiene standpoint, and then our teachers were taken care of, because I think a lot of people were so focused on the student and so focused on families where we forgot about educators as well. And they needed support. They needed assistance. So there were some of our educators that would stop by and, hey, can I grab something for my family? And we made that call as well.
And it's interesting because people think food, but they don't think about hygiene for kids. And if that's a need, then there's really no place that you can actually go and get that unless you obviously have the money or have the option to find it that way. Do you find that that's still a challenge that your kids are still facing, or were you able to supply them enough on the front end that that's less of an issue now?
I do believe that it's a challenge that they're still facing. I do believe that it was a challenge throughout the school year, but I do believe everything that has happened currently put a spotlight on it. We had students through our school year that weren't able to have lunch during the day, and then we as administrators would go buy them, whether it be Bojangles or Chick-fil-A, just so that they can eat, or order a pizza just so that these students could eat. And I think it didn't happen as on this magnitude, on this scale, so we kind of just handled it as it happened. But these problems were prevalent during the school year, and I think we needed to create a system for moving into the next school year, or hey, all of our students are taken care of whatever happens with food. All of our students are taken care of whatever happens with hygiene as well, because that's the responsibility to take care of our students from a safety perspective, from a hygiene perspective, and then also from an instruction perspective.
Great. So now let's have the real talk conversation that parents need to really start thinking about. We're in May. August is right around the corner. There's no end to this in sight. What advice would you give parents now as they're starting to think about? Because there's a lot of anxiety. There's a lot of questions. Heck, even from our position with the courthouse, like how in the world are we going to open on June 1st? Like, what is that going to look like? You're not supposed to have 25 people in a space, or 10 people in a space, but now you're talking about hundreds of people. Or what does that look like for kids in the fall? Like, what do parents need to start thinking about and preparing for now in the event the school year doesn't open the way that we anticipate?
So if this is a transparent conversation, I'm going to.
It needs to be.
For sure. We will not be opening school in August. I do not believe that students will even be back in school in September. I know UNCC, they're already said they're going back in September, but I don't personally see it as well, because if we're even following the CDC guidelines and staying 10 feet away or 6 feet away, there's no classroom size where we can have 18 students 6 feet away and be able to still facilitate a lesson. Now we've
Mm-hmm.
been able to talk about staggered start, where we have certain students there during certain days of the week, and then for certain times, and then we move out as well. But another thing that we're not considering and no one's talking about is transportation. How are we going to bus students where even some schools, they use those same buses for elementary, middle school, and high school? So
How
how
do
are
you
we
sanitize them? Like,
how do
how
you
do you do that?
after every stop? And how
Right.
do you sanitize every student that gets on that bus and you don't know the environment that they come from as well? And now it's back to an equity issue. I think we make decisions based upon specific demographics and how they live, whereas some demographics don't have the resources in terms of hand sanitizer, in terms of soap, in terms of all of these necessary things. And I do believe, even going to an equity issue, I've seen it as an educator where students are sick, but their parents have to go to work, so they still bring their student to class. This still may happen if a parent is there, they understand, hey, it may just be a common cold, so they still send their student to school because they have to work that job to take care of those 3 students within their household. That common cold may be the virus, and then it will affect a whole school system. So
Mm-hmm.
I think these are all things that we're not even considering or we're not thinking about. So I personally don't have the answer, but there are a few things that I do believe that parents can do at home that can still prepare their students, um, in the case that we're not in school. And I have a few tips for parents.
Please go ahead.
So the first one is, it's hard to meet something that you've never measured. So I think it's important for parents to set goals, for their children and with the child in mind. So yes, from an instruction standpoint, but allow the child to communicate things that they want to accomplish as well. Step 2 is learn the standards, that is important for this student, whether you're in kindergarten, whether you're in 8th grade, or whether you're about to graduate. Learn the actual standards, parents. I think a lot of times we don't understand what our students are supposed to be learning, during the given school year. Step 3 is create a schedule. And that's one thing that I had to do with my own child within the household, but create it with balance. It's not all about school. They can still learn with play. And learning with play does not mean playing Fortnite or playing on the computer, because we
Okay.
minimize screen time, because there's research that shows that too much screen time can have a long-term effect on their mental well-being and their mental health. So we want to be able to minimize that. And what I call it is turn off time. So not turn up time, turn off time, and be able to turn off the technology, turn off the phones, turn off the television, and be intentional with your child. So what that looks like in every household is completely different. And intentionality could be you sitting and having a conversation, you drawing something, you asking them to communicate their feelings. And I see Shamira is here. So she even has a journal that students can work with, that I recommend as well, that my son has worked with throughout this time. So if you're setting those goals and if you're allowing for that intentional time and you're minimizing the screen time and you create some type of schedule throughout the day, then I truly believe that your student once, or your child, once they get back to school, they will be in a better position, because I believe that my son has learned more at home than at school, and I'm paying for school. And
Mm-hmm.
it's just because we know our child best. And yes, we teach our teachers differentiation and being able to differentiate specific to the student's needs. But you know your child best and you know their needs. So you're the best educator for that child before they get to the school system. So I do believe if your child's behind, if they're advanced, use this time to catch them up or advance them forward, so that then when they do go back to school, they are prepared, they're not behind, and they're able to truly excel, not only from an instruction standpoint, but from a life standpoint.
So those are some excellent tips, and I've put them on the screen, and it's in the comments as well. But to make sure that you're setting goals, that you learn the standards, that you create a schedule with balance, and really, this is good for adults who minimize the screen time. My goodness, if it's affecting, we are on our phones way too much in the middle of the night, one eye open, trying to see what's going on. So those are great tips for parents with your kids, but I say that jokingly, but it's also great tips for us. And I really appreciate your candor, because I think people may have some unrealistic expectations in terms of when kids are going back to school. And if they're not careful, it's August is right around the corner. So families, it would be helpful for families and teachers to really start thinking about, okay, if that's the case, then what do I need to do? to start to prepare now, whether it's a technology issue or whether it's, childcare issues or whatever that case may be, because there's not going to be, summer camps, not in the traditional way. So where that used to be the escape, if you will, I mean, those things aren't going to be options the way that they used to be. So I think it's very important. Do you have any other tips that you would give to parents, or just anything else in that regard, as far as, okay, let's be realistic. If and when school doesn't open in August, now what? What do you do?
I believe that you do the things that you said you were going to do and that you said you were going to do before you got busy.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to stay transparent. I think a lot of the times it's like, hey, if I had more time, I'm going to do this. Hey, if I was able to spend more time with my child, I'm going to do this. Or all of these different things, or all of these goals, or all of these dreams that you may have had, or even time that you wanted with your child. This is the time to take advantage of that time. So I've learned more about my son now, and I've been intentional before, but I've learned more now about him. And I think he's taught me so much more about myself. And now I believe it's made me better as a person. So instead of using the time where your child isn't away to escape, use this time to escape back into things that can empower your household. Remain restorative, remain present, and remain thankful that you are even able to share these moments with your child as well. So yes, we understand that 26 million people are without a job, and hundreds of thousands of people have lost their lives, and all of these different tragedies are happening. But the reality of it is, right now, it's most important to continue to not so focus on instruction, but in focus on being impactful within your household.
Excellent. Now, I want to talk quickly about the Shine Institute, because I don't know if people know what that is, or the fact that you are a best-selling author. So let's talk about both.
For sure. So the Shine Institute was created years ago with the student in mind, really. I'm a W.E.B. Du Bois guy, and he has a talented 10th model. And what that really means is 10% of people will essentially be able to lead the majority. So I believe I was fortunate, and I'm grateful to be able to be raised by a 2-parent household. Neither one of them went to college. Neither one of them were entrepreneurs. Neither one of them were business owners. But I wanted to be an entrepreneur, and I wanted to be a business owner, and I wanted to go to college. But they weren't able to communicate the things that I needed to be successful. I still did well in school and all these different things. So I believe that there's a population of students that are the excelling students. There's a population of students that want a little bit more. There's a population of students that already do well in school, that already kind of do the bare minimum, and they still get straight A's in school, but they needed that push. They needed to be able to become leaders. And I wanted to create a specific niche of an educational system, or a center or a school that helps those types of students, not the excelling students, not the affluent students, not the students that are the failing students, but being able to help that middle student that doesn't know to go right or to go left. They needed that push to expose them to career opportunities that can advance them as a part of the educational process. And that's what I wanted to be able to create. So we're teaching our students financial literacy, real estate. We're teaching our students professional development, how to interview and how to excel. And then we're partnering that with STEM education as well, so that they can understand that, yes, applied mathematics is cool, but being able to purchase your first home at 21 because you've already developed a credit profile, or being able to understand financial literacy and build a business at 16, that's the way to go. So you can help your parents and not be so focused on helping or them helping you so much as well. So we have online programs. We have entrepreneurial programs within the school systems as well. We do trainings for staff because I do believe that it's challenging to give constructed criticism for something that you've never constructed. So yes, we can be teaching entrepreneurship as a part of a social studies lesson, but if you've never been an entrepreneur, you're not going to effectively be able to teach that lesson. So we bring in Fortune 500 companies, we bring in successful entrepreneurs, business owners, real estate professionals, graphic designers, videographers, just different career fields that we don't talk about in the school system. So we're creating entrepreneurs, creatives, and business owners.
Outstanding. So tell us about the books that you've written.
Yeah, so the first book that I wrote is The Mission Plan, The Decision. That turned into a 3-part series, The Discovery, The Destiny, And then I wrote a poetry book because I used to write poetry a lot. Still do it at times. 25 Years of Heaven. So I released that when I was 25 years old. And I'm working on another book, just finished it. It's called The Educator's Blueprint. And that's going to be talking about the overall educational process as well. And that will be releasing in the fall. But currently, right now, I thought it was so important to help people in this time of not understanding the next direction and the next place that they're needing to go, to provide them with a mission plan, with a blueprint on how to be successful from a financial perspective, from a professional perspective, and even from a personal perspective. And that's why I'm re-releasing the mission plan, the decision, for free for all people.
Outstanding.
And I want to be able to give people that are, whether they're struggling from this time, whether they are finding a new piece of their self during this time, I thought it was important to provide value for these people because I've used these very steps to be able to build an educational company that has been successful, to be able to impact people from all over the world, to be the youngest administrator without an educational background. And I do believe that a lot of times we're so focused on building the mission statement of a business or of a company, and we recognize that we don't even want to be in our own company, and we don't even
so true.
The person that we're looking at in the mirror. And there's been so many times like that with me, and using these steps, understanding triggers, understanding my next direction, identifying and defining my purpose has helped me be successful. And that's why I wanted to be able to re-release the mission plan, the decision, for everyone for free, completely free. There's no catches, so that they can have their journey and I could walk with them through their journey as well, so that they can find a piece back of them so that they can put the puzzle back together.
Now, is that on your website?
It is, yes.
Okay, which I'm one step ahead of you. KyleSking.com. So they can download it there, or is it available somewhere else?
And they can go to the missionplanbook.com. That's probably more simple because I know websites sometimes you're all over the place. And literally when they go to the missionplanbook.com, the missionplanbook.com, they're able to literally click on the link. It comes up, they put where the book is being shipped, and it gets shipped. And it's that simple.
Okay, so the missionplanbook.com is where they can go to get the free book.
Yes, ma'am.
Ebook, or is it
an actual physical copy? There's an ebook option as well, but I do believe, me being who I am, I like to write things down, and I've been writing things down now. I need something in my hand. So I wanted to be able to provide people with something that either they can put on their bookshelf, that they can keep with them, or they can just continue to write in as well.
Outstanding. Well, listen, thank you, Kyle. And I hope you, and I'm about to bring Dionne back up, will be available to do the full conversation where we really dig deep into who you are through pictures and all of that. And we can talk in more depth as far as the educational system, because I think some of the things that we'll need to be talking about in the fall will evolve, and some of the things we talked about offline in terms of what a 21st century school looks like and how we prepare for that if we're in a system that's not exactly ready for it. You know what I mean? So, Dionne, hello, dear. Welcome back. Welcome back. Wait, hold on. We got you. Hello. All right. So listen, girl, while you were gone, we done messed around and got you a place to post up and sort and everything. I pretty much told Kyle that's what he getting ready to do. So Kyle, you getting ready? So Kyle, you getting ready to give Dionne some space at Queen City? So she can sort, so she doesn't have to be sorting stuff in her house. Yes.
And if you need our educators or our teachers, you have hands on deck as well.
Sis,
that is perfect. And look, let me shout out Kyle. This is proof that he did provide these bags. I kept one of these because I'm like, I like receipts. So he's been very instrumental in the beginning phases. So I really do appreciate this, Kyle.
I didn't even know that. How about that? Now look, won't he do it? So listen, for those of you tuning in, and we had some folks chiming in all the way from the UK. So we love the fact that we're able to get your story out beyond just these borders, if you know what I mean. So Dionne, put up your Instagram, which is Dionne M_Esquire. Kyle, I put up your Instagram, Kyle S. King, on either Instagram or Facebook.
Yes.
Both of people can reach out to you on Facebook individually as well. Is that true?
Yes.
They can message you. Y'all got room for friends, or you just not so much?
I mean, I think Instagram is free and open. I have about 500 spots left on my Facebook, so I think I should be good.
Okay. But anybody
Hmm.
can reach out to you or send you a direct message on Instagram. And of course,
Absolutely.
Kyle, for you, your website is kylesking.com. The where they can actually get your book is the missionplanbook.com. And that's where they can get the actual ebook if they choose, or um actual hard copy book. Now, Dionne, we're gonna talk offline about how we getting ready to get this nonprofit popping, because you need to
Yes,
be able to get these coins, and you need to do it without limitation. But
that's
obviously they
right.
can reach out to you with at Feed Charlotte Babies, and of course, if you want to donate, the Cash App and the Venmo is on the screen, and I will drop that in the comments as well. And so, as we wrap up, I think the thing that's so important that I wanted people to know about both of you is how important it is to just follow that inner voice, whatever that is. Because oftentimes we kind of have a vision for where we think our life is going to be. And it takes a lot of courage to step out there on a new project or something different when it doesn't always necessarily align with where you think you should be. So I salute both of
Absolutely.
you for having the courage to really step out there and to meet those needs of people in the community, whether it's the babies, whether it's the parents. And Kyle, I truly appreciate you just telling us like it is, like
Hmm.
what is probably going to look like in the fall, so that people aren't, shocked and mortified, but they're proactive during this time. So, Kyle, any other words that you'd like to share with us as we wrap it up?
I know Dionne said something earlier I wanted to kind of touch on. And I think one of the misconceptions of parents is, how do I give? Or even when we're trying to build something, how do I give? So there's three things that I feel like anybody watching that can give to Dionne's organization, Feed Charlotte Babies, that I think would be so instrumental. You could either give your time, you could give your talent, or you can give your treasure.
That's my thing. I say that all the time. Yes, son.
Hmm.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
You
Go ahead.
preach it. Go ahead and preach.
So I
Let
think
them
a lot
know.
of times, even if you just give your time to go grocery shopping, even if you just give your talent to learn logistics or do the logistics, or even if you give a treasure to this great organization, to this great cause, those are the three things that I believe that anyone can identify with. Even if it's 30 minutes of time, even if it's $3 of treasure, or even if it's some talent that you can give to being able to help our students and our children of this great city. I think those three are so important. And through this time of us losing our sometimes our faith, we have to hold ourselves accountable to just being able to give, because through service, that's the true leaders as well. So I
Amen.
appreciate being a part of this. Dionne, I appreciate you as well. And I'm so thankful for you and everything that you've done for not only our students, but also the children of Charlotte. And if you need us as a resource by any means, just let me know.
Absolutely. Thank you. I truly appreciate that. And I will take you up on that offer. So don't ignore me.
For sure.
Oh no, we're not gonna let that happen. It's recorded now. It's on the loop. Can't take it back. Anyway. All right, Dionne, since you have the last word, anything that you'd like for people to know in terms of how else they may be able to help you?
A lot of questions I have received since starting this project is, what can I do to get involved? And I've been telling people, use what is within your sphere of influence. And so while I chose to feed Charlotte Babies, if you are in the financial industry, maybe you can give tips to individuals during this time as well. If you're a teacher, like I know my best friend, she's a teacher in New York, and what they're doing is they're having like free tutoring sessions after school to help parents out with homeschooling. So just look inside, look around you, and see how you can contribute. Your contribution may be different, but it is absolutely necessary.
Outstanding. Well, for those of you tuning in, make sure that you are supporting Feed Charlotte Babies. Make sure that you reach out to Dionne as far as if you can offer any assistance as far as sorting or shopping, any logistical pieces. I think definitely take advantage of Kyle's offer for the free book that he's offered.
Absolutely.
because it will help you in terms of figuring out what your own mission is. That's very generous of you. So thank you for sharing that, and we'll make sure that people have access to that so they can take advantage of that free resource. And of course, as Kyle said earlier, just don't forget those tips in terms of your kids, in terms of making sure that you're limiting the screen time, that you're setting goals, that you're learning the standards, that you're creating a schedule with balance, all of those things during this time, so that you have those things ingrained in your kids now, and it's something that will continue post pandemic. So thank you
Mhm.
guys so very much. Definitely make sure you reach out. Definitely make sure that you support. Of course, as all things, follow us on all things social media at the Convo Pod
Mhm.
Show. So excited about our third installment of Wonderful Wednesdays next week. We will be joined by Nate Turner of Your Custom Creations, and we're going to take a little bit of a different tack. Joel Siegel will be my guest, and he's a legend in terms of politics and legislation, and
Mhm.
was one of the authors of Obamacare, like that dude. So we're going to talk about health
Nice.
disparities. We're going to talk about some of the policy things we should be thinking about as Americans and where we are now. Not a deep political discussion, but we're just going to take it from a different standpoint, because some of the wonderful work that he's doing is behind the scenes, and it's affecting all of us in ways that we don't know. So those will be our guests. Those two gentlemen will be our guests next Wednesday at 8 o'clock. But again, thank you all so much for joining us tonight. Dionne, Kyle, you've been amazing guests. And if you're tuning in for the replay, make sure that you go and follow and support both of them and all the wonderful, wonderful work they're doing on this wonderful Wednesday. You guys have a good night.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Wow.
Thank you. It was my pleasure. Bye bye now.